everyone. Welcome to the Unstoppable Together. The Future is Accessible mini-series. I am Taylor Lee, Colorado Cross Disability Coalition's Leadership and Advocacy intern, and I have the pleasure of interviewing Elijah. Thank you, Elijah, for being here. And I'm so excited to get your perspective on what it means to have to be a leader, an advocate, and what the future of the disability justice looks like. And so, Elijah, do you mind introducing yourself to the viewers?
Sure. Hello, I'm Elijah Ayers. I am an interpreter here at CDPHE, Colorado Department for Health and Public Health and Environment. I love what I do. I've been an interpreter now since 2019. And as a person of color and as an interpreter, it's two really interesting intersections that I've kind of been dealing with for the last couple of years. But it really does shed some light into a lot of things that I kind of, a lot of us gloss over, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, definitely. So we like to have people imagine the future. So what does an accessible future look like to you, and how do we do it together?
Yeah. So an accessible future to me looks like having everybody involved, having everybody at the table, having everybody's voices heard. I am a Black male, and I've continuously been left outside of the dinner table, just like per se. So for me, when I think about inclusion and accessibility, it's not just a few voices; it's all the voices. It's not just men or women, or it's not just able-bodied, disabled, or it's not just this or that. There's everybody that has to be at the table. Everybody that can represent a type of identity should be there, and I think we have to really confront systems if we want them to change. And I think that by advocating and challenging those systems, it'll encourage other people to want to do the same thing and put themselves in positions where we can help change.
Yeah, definitely. So you've had different opportunities throughout your life to learn about advocacy and leadership and what it looks like to be inclusive. And can you talk more about that and what you learned at different stages of your life and career?
Sure. So I am a first generation college student. Nobody in my family has been to college. And so one of the first opportunities I was able to experience was college, or my post-secondary education. And while I was in college, one of the classes I took was a sociology class, and in one of the sections was a section about power, privilege, and oppression. And in that, I learned a lot of things that that didn't directly, targeted at me. And I learned about things that I may have intentionally or unintentionally done to other people in other groups to either oppress or lift them up. That was the first opportunity, and it was eye-opening for me because a lot of that information isn't accessible to you in lower socioeconomic neighborhoods. Like when I was raised in, I was also raised in foster care, so I didn't have parents to give me the moral codes and give me, explain to me what is right, what is wrong, how I should treat people. So I had to kind of learn them as I went on. But college was one of those first steps in my life. I did learn about society as a whole, and that I wasn't just, one person in this rainbow of society. There was other people, other colors, other types of people that were there that also were having some of the same experiences. So that was eye-opening. And then realistically, when I became an interpreter, because I had no relationship with the deaf community. I didn't grow up with deaf parents. I'm not deaf or hard of hearing. I was in the military, and I have lost some of my hearing because of war, obviously. But I don't have a disability that's based on my hearing. So the first time I really experienced what it was like to have or experience or interact with people that had disabilities was when I started learning to become an interpreter. And the narratives and the stories and the experiences that were shared with me were, for the most part, pretty egregious. But that led me to where I am now, and my fight for advocacy and for accessibility. And I'm not the greatest interpreter on the planet, but I know that ethically speaking, I will always try my best. I'll always interpret to my fullest extent. And if I don't know what's being said or not accessible, I'll advocate or speak up to make sure that it is accessible.
Yeah, a way to put yourself out there. And I also was a first generation college student,
Mm,
and I recognize that it's definitely a privilege to have an higher education.
right.
And sometimes I have a hard time grappling with the fact that, most of the world, we're less than 10% of us have a higher education. So, how do you think we can make the information more accessible for the general public? Because sometimes it does come across, and I don't want to come across this way with having a higher education as if we're speaking down to people, when I really just want to be sharing the information that I was given and learned and studied throughout my undergrad and grad school days.
Mm.
So, do you have anything to say regarding that?
Yeah, I I know exactly what you're talking about, and in specifically in our communities, like me as a black person in the black community, a lot of people in my community don't have degrees and don't have post-secondary college experience or post-secondary education experience. And so when we're coming off to disseminate information, sometimes it can come off as we're talking down to people. But I've learned that um, with when it just comes to just being in like communicating with other human beings, if you have the tact and if you have the awareness to speak to people in a way that's going to be received well, it can be received and it will be received. But you have to understand people. You have to understand how to communicate and how to interact with people in a way that it's going to be received really well. Because, like you said, it can come off as condescending because we come off as like these subject matter experts and we have been educated. We did learn this content, and now we're trying to disseminate it or share it with people. And sometimes that sharing or that dissemination can rub people the wrong way.
Definitely. Yeah. So it's a hit and miss, but over time, like I said, it's a muscle. So you kind of learn to pick your battles and to choose the times that maybe people are open to listening and hearing and coming from it, where it's like a inclusive conversation rather than
Right.
something else. So if you could see one change happen in the next 5 years, what would that be?
If I could see one thing change in the next 5 years, that would be that every type of communication that is related to the government, whether it be a national emergency declaration, or it's just a press conference, or it's just information being disseminated for information's sake, that one thing I'd like to see change is that all of that information be at least interpreted, captioned, and accessible. Because, as you know, during the COVID pandemic, a lot of people were in isolation that didn't have access to accommodations, including a lot of people in the deaf community. And a lot of that information went by the wayside. And a lot of people, either faced some really hard hardships because they didn't have access to information or the information wasn't accessible.
Do you have an example of what kind of accommodations they would need, or like something that they were lacking, or do you have like a firsthand story?
I mean, a firsthand experience during the COVID pandemic. I remember watching. I'd wake up in the morning, I'd turn the news on, and as a hearing able-bodied person, I would see and hear what was going on. So I was pertinent to the information that was being disseminated. But there are people that didn't get the information because a lot of those press conference briefings were not interpreted, nor were they captioned. And so,
Yeah.
and there's a lot more that needs to be done besides that. But at the bare minimum, captioning and interpreting things so that they are accessible is super important, especially if it has to do with things that are related to health and people's well-being.
Yeah, definitely. I like being a part of the disability community because it is so diverse and anyone can be a part of it at any point, hence my story. I acquired my blindness, and so I am wondering, like what you think about outside of the deaf community, how you've accommodated others, because you have so much experience with one group. Do you find yourself learning more about other disabilities as well?
Yeah, it's interesting you ask that. So I do find myself being a lot more accommodating to people just because I have been exposed to the information, and through my interaction with the deaf community, I learned a lot about other disabilities as well, and I learned about interacting with a lot of people with those other disabilities. So, I feel like I'm a little ahead of the game. I feel a little bit more fortunate than most people, but I did notice that because I do the work that I do, I'm a lot more privy to understanding accommodations and accessibility, and so I'm a lot more willing and capable. Like I'm much more willing to like go out of my way to make sure that people are accommodated.
Yeah.
Like for small example, I was on the bus the other day, one person came on with a wheelchair who, just needed to be on the bus to go wherever they were going. I understand that there's certain seating in the bus that's specifically set aside for people that are in wheelchairs. And as soon as the person got on the bus, I kind of was like, oh, that's right, I'm sitting in the wheelchair accessible area. Let me get up and reseat myself somewhere else. And just little things like that. Just being aware, understanding, and even just, caring about other people. You don't have to go out of your way or break your neck to do anything for someone, but at least just caring.
Yeah, definitely. There's little things that people can do, and raising awareness is a big deal. And, there's so many people who want to do well or do good for others. They just, sometimes it's a little bit awkward in the moment. I just say embrace the awkwardness at times. But like, I really like that you're open to shifting your own mindset to help others. So let's talk about leadership and voice. Why do you think it's important to have people with disabilities lead the way when it comes to building communities, accessible communities, and policies?
I really think it's super important that people with disabilities are leading the way for a lot of this policy and implementation. One, like, you don't know what you don't know until you know, right? So how would anybody that's able-bodied know what somebody that has a disability needs until they actually ask them or that person informs them of their needs? So that being said, having more people in these positions of leadership, that voice is there, that the dialogue is there. So it's not just a bunch of people thinking or assuming they know what someone else needs. There's somebody there that actually has the needs, that's describing what they need from the people that are implementing the policies and or the laws that are going into effect.
Yeah. And you have a military background. So can you tell us what you've learned from that and how it overlaps with your interpretation and your view on the world?
I mean, my military service, it really helped me to, one, to think about things other than myself. So in the military, one of the biggest things that they kind of harp on is camaraderie and like teamwork. One person can't complete a mission. Two people can't complete a mission, but a group of people that all have the same goal in mind can complete a mission. And with that being said, I know that it's not just me that can complete this mission of accessibility and accommodation. I need help from other people. I need help from people in disabled communities. I need help from people in communities of color. I need help from people that are in privileged communities that could help move the bar when it comes to like getting policy implemented. But the military definitely taught me that teamwork is the way to make the dream work, or teamwork makes the dream work. So I know that with that, working in tandem with people with disabilities is the only way to accomplish what we want to accomplish.
Yeah, definitely. I think about a lot of people who feel paralyzed and they don't know how to take a step forward. But, sometimes steps or moving forward looks different for all of us. But I definitely have been thinking about encouraging others to volunteer, get involved in community. And so can you speak about that and what your community looks like and what you expect from your community and what they expect from you?
So like in my community, I live in two communities. I stay in Colorado Springs mostly, but I visit 5 Points a lot. And both those communities are super robust and very diverse. And from the community towards me, I really can't ask much because I'm just a bead in this bowl of beads, and one bead is just a bead, but with multiple beads. I feel like my community, what they want from me is for me to tell the story of the community. It's one perspective, but it's a perspective of the community, because a lot of those perspectives are missing when it comes to like the narratives being broadcasted out there. And I think that people from my community want me to tell the story so that people understand, and it's not just an assumption, or it's not just like a stereotype or a stigma. People know when they hear from that community, or they have representatives from the community to express that. What was the other part of the question?
No, just what your community looks like and why is it important for you to be involved in community.
Yeah, and it's like I said, it's a very diverse community, and it's super important to be involved because I feel like it goes back to like bystander syndrome. If a bunch of people are standing around not doing anything or being involved, nothing happens. But if a bunch of people are getting involved, things happen, things change, policies change.
Yeah, I like that saying. I think it was like Mr. Rogers, where bad things happen, but his mom told him, like, make sure when after the bad things happen, like, see who's helping,
Right.
see all of the good that comes from these bad situations.
Right.
So, um, my last question for you is, what would you say to somebody who is just learning to claim their voice in this movement?
Um, yeah, having a voice can be frightening and can be scary, but it's important to use your voice because in order to be heard, you have to use your voice, and we can't just sit in silence and hope that things will change because that's not how things work. You have to, you have to speak up to be heard. But one thing I will tell people that are just getting into this and just finding their voice, if you're having an issue finding your voice, maybe you know someone that has been using their voice for a long period of time, and you can ask them how to do it. Or, you can go maybe align yourself with multiple people who are in the same boat that you are and that maybe also have a reluctance to want to use their voice, but, with other people in social facilitation might be more willing to use their voice and, in protest or like, in whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish. But, finding your voice is very hard, but if you can't find your voice, maybe find others to help you find your voice or find others who have a voice to help you find your voice.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, thank you so much, Elijah, for sharing your voice and your vision with us. You truly embody what it means to be unstoppable. And if you want to learn more about Elijah or other incredible advocates, please follow Colorado Cross Disability Coalition on our social media platforms. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Blue Sky at CCDC Online. You can search for CCDC Colorado or visit our website, www.ccdconline.org. And remember, together, we are unstoppable.